The air is thick, heavy. In Beirut's southern suburbs on Wednesday, smoke was rising from buildings hit by overnight strikes, while young men on mopeds sped along largely empty roads, and residents grabbed what they could from their homes, some driving off with mattresses tied to car roofs. Buildings once homes now resemble death and destruction. "The area has become a ghost town," said the taxi driver who has sent his parents, his sister and her children, already displaced by Israeli bombing in South Lebanon, to safety elsewhere. This is not a war zone, not in the traditional sense. There are no front lines marked on a map, no trenches dug in haste. This is a place where ordinary life, laughter echoing from balconies, children chasing pigeons in the square, has been shattered by the violence of bombs. The smell of concrete dust mingles with something acrid, the ghost of explosives lingering long after the blast. Each footstep through the rubble feels like a violation. A crunch of glass, a twisted piece of metal glinting underfoot, they are all silent testaments to the lives torn apart. This was a community, vibrant and alive. Now it's a graveyard of memories, haunted by the ghosts of laughter and the shattered dreams of its people. An area of tightly packed blocks of flats, shops and businesses, Beirut's southern suburbs are also home to Hezbollah's main institutions. Israel says it is targeting sites belonging to the Iran-backed militant group. Rescue workers, their faces grim but determined, move with practiced efficiency, their calls for silence echoing through the shattered concrete canyons. They listen for the faintest whispers, a cough, a moan, any sign that beneath the wreckage, hope might still breathe. An old woman, her face a tapestry of wrinkles etched by time, and now, etched deeper by grief, sits on a broken chair amidst the ruins of her home. Her eyes, though bloodshot, hold a fierce light as she clutches a faded photograph. It's a picture of a young man, smiling, his arm around her shoulders. Her son, perhaps, or a grandson, forever young in her memory. She doesn't speak, but her silence speaks volumes.
A young father, his face streaked with dirt and tears, frantically digs through the debris of what was once his daughter's bedroom. His hands, raw and bleeding, refuse to stop, fueled by a desperate hope. Every now and then, he calls out a name, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and choked with emotion. Amina. Amina. The name hangs in the air, a fragile prayer against the backdrop of devastation.
There's a heartbreaking innocence amidst the destruction. A little girl, no older than 5, stands on the edge of a crater, her tiny hand clutching the hand of a woman, her mother presumably. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, stare at the pile of rubble that was once her home. There's no tears, no cries of despair, just a silent acceptance of something she's too young to comprehend. Later, as aid workers gently guide them towards a makeshift shelter, the little girl lets go of her mother's hand for a moment. She bends down and picks up a dust-covered notebook from the ground. It's her drawing book, its pages filled with colorful crayon scribbles. She flips through it, her face crumpling as she realizes the extent of her loss. Not the house, not the toys, but the irreplaceable creations of her young imagination. That night, as the little girl tries to sleep on a cot in a crowded school gymnasium, her mother holds her close, whispering stories of resilience and hope. But the images of the day, the dust, the destruction, and the lost drawings are memories that will likely scar long after the physical wounds have healed. Beirut's southern suburbs, a densely populated area, home to families from all walks of life, have become a focal point in a conflict not of their making. The reasons are complex, a tangled web of geopolitics, ideologies, and ancient grievances. But for the people here, caught in the crossfire, such explanations are cold comfort.
They talk of nights punctuated by the terrifying whistle of falling bombs, of huddling in fear as buildings shook and windows shattered. They speak of fleeing their homes with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Some are staying with relatives, and others in schools turned shelters in Beirut or in rented flats. Some are staying with relatives, and others in schools turned shelters. Those with nowhere to go have been sleeping on the streets, not knowing whether they'd ever return.
Their voices, though laced with anger and despair, also carry a note of defiance. This is their home, they say, and they will rebuild. They will clear the rubble, brick by brick, and they will reclaim their lives. But the scars of this conflict, both physical and emotional, will likely run deep. a constant reminder of the human cost of a war that seems to have no end. In the aftermath of the airstrikes, shelters across Beirut are overflowing. Schools, mosques, and community centers have been transformed into temporary havens for the displaced. Mattresses line the floors, families crammed together, their faces etched with exhaustion and uncertainty. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, fear, and despair.
Children, their faces pale and drawn, clutch at their mother's skirts, their eyes reflecting the trauma they've witnessed. The elderly, frail, and bewildered, sit huddled in corners, their whispers of a life left behind lost in the cacophony of the makeshift shelter.
Aid workers, their faces etched with compassion fatigue, work tirelessly to distribute food, water, and blankets. But the needs are overwhelming, the resources stretched thin. The humanitarian crisis is deepening, a stark reminder of the devastating impact of conflict on innocent civilians. The international community has expressed its deep concern and called for a swift resolution to the conflict. But for the people of Beirut's southern suburbs, these words ring hollow. Where is the help, they ask? Where is the outrage?
They see their city in ruins, their lives shattered. They see their children traumatized, their futures uncertain. And they see a world that seems content to watch their suffering from a distance, offering platitudes instead of action.
The people of Beirut are resilient. They have survived wars and invasions before, but they need more than just words of sympathy. They need concrete action, they need support, and they need hope. They need the world to see them, not just the rubble of their homes, but the strength of their spirit and their unwavering determination to rebuild their lives from the ashes. Please subscribe, like, and share for more content and updates on issues that affect us most. Thanks for watching.